We have only 35 chambers. There is no 36.
I know that. But I want to create a new chamber.
And what would that be?
I think Shaolin techniques should be available to all. So then, that's my idea for a new chamber. To teach the martial arts to the people. Anybody.
Okay. Welcome back to another episode of My 3 Cents. This, I feel like, is going to be a turning point in our episodes. Because what I want to first address today, what I want to start off by saying is, I've been getting a lot of conversation. Some would call it backlash. I just call it opinion. About some of the things I talk about as far as religion, race relations, the Caucasian, the colonizer, the oppressor, whatever you want to call them. Children of the Moon. I talk about black people, black in quotes. I talk about melanated people, African Americans, whatever you want to call us, right? Because what's in the name? Don't get too caught up and hung up in these names and titles of things. And that's part of the problem with a lot of people, as far as why they can't look beyond things, because they're too caught up where they are with the titles of things. The title is not important. The title don't make you important. And if you feel like that makes you important, then you're just a part of the issue and not a part of the solution. So, that being said, I want to talk about why I talk about some of the things I talk about. That might seem a little redundant, but I feel like it's important, and I feel like it needs to be done. Because I'm wanting to go a little bit deeper in these conversations, and what I've been doing is trying to keep it somewhat surface level to accommodate the listeners that aren't used to hearing certain types of content. I'm going to stop doing that. I'm telling you now, I'm going to stop doing that because I feel like whoever finds this is meant for them to find. And at whatever level I'm speaking at about whatever topic, I mean, if you can't grasp it, I would suggest do some studying and then come back and listen again. But I normally don't break things down too small because that's very time consuming. And I'm not trying to teach, I'm just trying to educate. And like I always say, educate comes from the Latin educare, which only means to bring out what is within. So I'm not giving you anything, but I'm just unlocking something that you probably didn't realize you already had, right? And you're probably not using to your full potential. So I like to talk about things like spirituality, and how it's linked with religion, how the universe is linked to itself, how everything is everything. And that's what I'm going to start focusing more of my energy on, is giving you the understandings of how everything is everything. So what I'm going to do today is I want to start with belief and what's giving people so many issues with new information. It's your belief system. It's you. It's not the information. It's not the religions or whatever you belong to. It's you, right? It is you. I know I talk about the Bible a lot. I reference it a lot as far as information because I know that's the only book a lot of people own. I own a lot of books, but especially black people, sometimes the only book you'll find in their house is the Bible. And beyond that, magazines, right? So with a lot of pictures in them. And I'm not trying to clown my people, but it's true. And this is what I'm saying. I have to be able to say what's true. You can comment and make all the backlash you want. You can say I'm a devil worshiper, whatever you've been saying. That's cool. I really don't care because I can break down and explain to you what these things are that you're trying to link me up with and how they don't exist anyway. So I have no problem with anybody's opinion. I welcome your opinion because it gives me opportunities like this to address what I've been hearing and what people are thinking, right? This is a two-way conversation. So I want to start with belief today. The thing that holds most of us in place and holds us back from where we could be is our actual belief systems. Now, one of the strongest things in the realm to believe in is time. And like I said, these recordings, episodes, or whatever you want to call them are going to start getting a little bit more complicated in their content because I got to go deeper. I can't stay surface level for that long. It's uncomfortable for me And there's a lot of people that want the meat. They want the real that's behind what I'm talking about. They know I'm talking in code. Um, it's a shame that they say we have freedom of speech, but in this day and age, you really still have to kind of talk in code, because if you start speaking against the systems that we're in, they will start to break down. And they need us to participate, especially black or melanated people. They really need us to participate. The evidence I've been seeing lately is just with the elections and stuff like that. If you pay attention, and I encourage you, watch these debates, man. Who do you think they're talking about? They're talking about you. They're talking about the fate of what they want to do to you. So if you ain't got time, you want to watch Love and Hip Hop and all this, and you don't have time to turn to the debates and understand what that they're talking about you, this is what I'm saying. You're part of the problem and not part of the solution. So your opinion is kind of invalid at that point, because look what you're spending your time doing. Now, I'm not judging you, but I'm pointing it out, because this is where we are. I am not proud of where our people are. I'm not making this about race and culture, but it needs to be at least addressed. If you don't care about it, then go on with your day. But I'm going to address what needs to be addressed, because it is what it is. I'd rather not spend my time talking about the news, events, and things that everyone else is already talking about. I would rather try to give you something that you can hold on to. This is larger than opinion. This is bigger than that. You know, I don't advocate for voting or voting or giving your energy at the polls, which only denote energy as well, right? The polarities of energy, the positive and the negative. So this is why you vote at the polls. You got to understand that this stuff is coded. And what I'm going to start spending a lot of my time doing is breaking down code. I ain't talking about black code. I ain't talking about the G code. I'm talking about code, straight up code. I'm going to start spending more of my time deliberately breaking down code. I'm going to show you stuff that is the same thing. And I know for a fact a lot of y'all are not going to be able to take in a lot of this stuff because it's going to be too new to you. But again, not my problem. If you want to know more, just look a little deeper. And I can also give you resources, books, different places to look into. No different than the book you're getting all your information from that you don't really understand. And I'm talking to the Christians. I got to address it because most of my people are Christian. Not by choice, but by indoctrination. You were born into it. So that's just like a slave or someone that was getting slaved at the time that was born into it and did not choose it, but also did not choose to try to leave it because they saw no problem with it. So when we get to talking about these choices and stuff, it gets a little complicated because a choice comes down to your perception. If you don't see a problem, you're not going to choose to leave it, right? So we can't be in a modern day perspective trying to deliberate on the past with a modern day mind. You have a modern day mindset trying to make sense of history or historical events that you weren't even there for. So I say focus on the now and move forward. And remember, the now always creates the history anyway. How does now create history? Because history is not real. The future is not real either. The only thing real is now. So you can choose to talk about yesterday. You can choose to try to reimagine yesterday in your mind, in your mind's eye. You can do that all you want to, but remember, that's wasted energy. That energy would be better served in your now. So now let's get into some information. Let's get into some knowledge. Let's hear something you haven't heard, right? So I know a lot of you are saying, well, what are you going to say that's so special? What could you possibly know? Well, here we go. So first thing I want to talk about was that whole belief system thing, right? And an example I want to give is getting older. And so what I'm going to tell you is this. It's not the age, the actual age that slows a man down. It's the belief system. See? It's believing in time that causes you to say, I don't have time. It's believing in age that makes you say I'm getting old. So it's the belief systems of the mind and the belief in self that actually diminishes. So when you start to believe in yourself less, this is what the real knowledge of aging is. It is when the belief of self starts to diminish. There is no time. But in this realm, in this dimension, time rules. You see, what they have done is created constructs. They have made time responsible for death and all the other stages of life because they want to tell you you're this age and by this age you should be doing this and at this time you should have that. These are all misconceptions based on somebody's model that they chose to make this way. You got to understand that first. This stuff ain't set in stone because these aren't earth or universal laws. These are man's rules. This is man's doing. So different stages of life, evolution, death, birth, all these things are so closely linked into time that we don't know how to unlink them at this point. So one who believes in time will always be affected by time in the mind. You see? And you got to also understand that in the mind is where things are made real. This is why belief is such an issue, because what you believe in is real to you. Point blank, period. So this is how age will be an effective tool to usher those who subscribe unto death. The being has to believe in time for it to have a diminishing effect. So once you get into the system and you're letting the system work, you're looking in the mirror every year talking about how you're getting older. That's the only thing that's going to keep happening. Because your now is your everything. So anytime you go in that mirror and think like that, that's your now, that's your everything. Now you are in a perpetual state of aging. How do you stop that? Well, there's plenty of ways to stop it because there's people that don't pay attention to age and don't believe in it. And guess what? They're older than most people you know and in better shape and look better. Am I lying? So when you start to believe that you're old, you start to get slower. You start to believe you can't jump no more, then you can't jump no more. This is not science. To an extent it is, but not what's happening to you. What's happening to you, the only science behind it is that you're doing it to yourself because it's how you feel about yourself. So you got to understand that even something like getting old is a choice. And like I just said, how can we confirm that it's a choice? Once again, it's because you can choose to believe the opposite. And when you believe the opposite, you can see clearly that it was always up to you and it was always up to choice and what you believed in. This is the ability to choose. Right? This comes down to perception. It's very important to have clear perception. Because this is what's going to change your reality. And your reality alone. You believing in time don't make me old. Right? If you think my age, I'm supposed to look a certain way, be a certain way, anything like that, that's your hang up. Has nothing to do with me. You see? People look at me and they always think I'm younger than I am. I'm out there on the basketball court. I mean, whatever I'm doing it to the best of my ability, not to the best of what my age will allow me to do. That's a weird way to think. I've never thought like that. I've never put limitations on myself. So I'll probably be that 90-year-old guy looking 40, looking 50, wherever the case may be. Because I don't let constructs that are outside of me dictate how I evolve. Very important. So the bottom line to this first part is that you should just ultimately create the reality that you want for yourself at the end of the day. Stop believing in the reality that somebody else is trying to give you. That's nonsense. Let that go. That's stupid. You're not them. Stop taking in what other people are giving you and digesting it for your own nourishment. It don't work that way. So now I'm going to move on. So I just wanted to show you that what's doing the culprit of a lot of this, And a lot of our issues is just belief. It's just belief. The belief systems we get trapped in. It's like religion. What is the first thing a Christian is going to ask you when they want to see if you're in their cult mind? And remember, don't get all spooked because I said cult, right? Cult just means culture. If you walk around talking about the black culture or hip hop culture or the cancel culture, don't you understand that that is a cult? What is a cult? It is a lot of like-minded people moving the same way. That's also a hive mind. This is how they want you to operate. This is how elections work. This is how a lot of things work. You vote. They only give you a couple choices. They need a lot of y'all to be on the same page. That's why it's done that way. So all you Christians and religious people, stop getting triggered off of these little words. Stop being so triggered. Stop being so judgmental to something that you don't understand. Let that go. It's very ignorant. It's very ignorant, and it won't get you anywhere. I hate to say it, but the most struggling people in this world are Christians, are religious people. The religious people are the most struggling, and they'll look at other people and say, well, how come he's doing the devil's work, right? And he's so successful in this and that. That's because they're not stuck in belief systems. It's not that they're doing some called devil work. It's just that they're not stuck where you're stuck. You're trying to do everything from one corner of one box. I'm just saying, the most struggling, most prayingest people, most out of shape, and everything else are the people that sit around believing in stuff. Believing that one day something's going to come and make everything right. That is a very dangerous thing they have done to people. Very dangerous. But it does keep you in line. And it does keep you obedient. When you start talking about these Bibles and stuff, you gotta realize and remember there was also a slave Bible. You're talking about all these different versions. Oh, they're the same thing. They're just saying it different. They're just nah. If you're saying it different, then it's different. Duh. Why you need 100 or something versions of one book? What are you trying to do? You're trying to appeal to every person that picks it up and trying to say, hey, we got a version for you. You don't need to go nowhere else. Just get the version you like. Come on, man. Y'all can't see through that? Seriously. So I'm going beyond this nicey nice talking around what's going on. It is what it is, man. If you don't like it, just make your own podcast. Talk about the stuff you don't like. Right? Now let's talk about something that you probably never heard of, remote viewing. Like I told you, I'm about to start hitting some topics that you ain't never went into yet because that's what I'm able to do, and that's what I'm going to start doing to the fullest. Remote viewing. A lot of you probably never heard of remote viewing. This is when I don't have to be in the same place as you to see you. Now, I'm going to tell you the first stage of that, imagining someone. Imagery in the mind's eye. If they're not there, how do you image them? This stuff is already mystical. Think about how strange it is that even with somebody that's deceased or passed away, you can, in your mind, imagine them. Not only that, but you can hear their voice if you so conjure it. Think about that. How do you put somebody else's voice in your mind? Think about that. You see, this stuff is already spiritual. That's why I don't dance around it, because the unseen is doing way more work than this illusion that we all live in. And I'm going to start getting to the meat of these topics. And I'm not going to just say that it's an illusion, but I'm going to take you as close as I can to showing you why it's an illusion, how it's an illusion. So remote viewing has been going on, and you can look this stuff up. It's been going on since the 40s by your lovely government. This has been going on for a long time. Look it up. You don't got to believe me. But I'm about to show you how remote viewing is linked to spirituality. It's a lot going on that they don't tell you about because they don't want you to have the connections. Maybe I'm not supposed to give them. Maybe this is why only some people have it. I struggled with that for a while with doing this. I said, well, if I have the information and the information is power, should I be giving it out? So this is why I don't advertise this station. This is why I say, if you got something from it, you know who to give it to. I do not advertise this because some of the things that I'm saying, some would say I'm not supposed to say. Some would say I'm not supposed to share. But I think that's why we're in the state we're in. Too many of us are scared. So the governments of this country and other countries like Russia have been doing remote viewing since the 40s, man. I'm telling you how this works. As a human being, as a spirit, as light, as sound, as color, as anything you want to talk about, you are only broken down to frequency and vibration. A human operates within a certain range of frequency. You can see within a certain range of frequency. You can hear within a certain range of frequency. And you yourself are visible within a certain range of frequency. So there is also frequencies that exist that you're not visibly on. This is how we tap into the unseen. Where do you think they came up with the knowledge for radio waves and microwaves and all this stuff? They came up with that knowledge from the knowledge of wave particles, from studying quantum physics and you. And they figured out how to utilize the unseen, the empty space or the space in between us, in between our perceptions that we cannot perceive with the naked eye, and put information on it. How do you think phones work? If you could see all the information in the air, we probably wouldn't be able to see each other. So what I'm telling you is that the human operates on a certain frequency. I can play a sound at a frequency that you can't hear. Does that mean the sound is not being played? Dogs and insects can see colors and stuff that you can't see. Does that mean that they're imagining it or it's not there? You got to understand this type of stuff. So remote viewing is the knowledge and understanding that we operate on certain frequencies. And if I'm able to tap in to the human frequency, if I can tap in to your frequency range or the range within the human frequencies, a certain range, then guess what? Everything on that range is visible to me. Everything on that range is audible to me. This is a deeper knowledge of your everyday goings on. You never think about how your phone works, microwaves. Why do you think people with pacemakers can't stand by a microwave? Because the waves of the microwave will permeate the body, cause damage to its internal organs, mainly the heart. You got to understand that there's a frequency of you where things are going right through you. You are not as solid as you think you are. But again, this is a problem with perception and the senses. When Earth limits you to these senses, you start thinking that what the senses show you is everything. What you feel through these senses is everything. No, it's not. It's only a part of it. That is what the distractions are for. So you never make that connection. Got to keep you distracted so you can't make the connection. So there is ways to get on certain frequencies. Don't you know when you, right now I'm building some electronics that have to do with my venture. And one of the first things I found out is that you have to have permission, especially when making electronics, because of the range of frequency that they will operate on. And you're only given a certain range to be able to use depending on where you are in the world, because they don't want you on these other unseen realms without permission. They don't want you doing work on different frequencies without permission. That's why stuff like the FCC and stuff exists, because they know how to tap into everything you're doing, especially with all the electronics. And if you don't understand electronics, you better realize that anything that can receive a signal also transmits a signal. Nothing goes one way. So if you think your TV is only showing you picture and is not taking anything from your house and sending it back, you are sadly mistaken. Everything works in two directions, minimally. So when we're talking about this remote viewing, what they were doing, and they use it for remote viewing is used for threat assessment, right? This kind of stuff is used when they need to know if these people are meeting up over here all the time and they're having these little secret meetings, man, how can we get into these meetings without getting into these meetings? Remote viewing. Because we'll use a technology that people just aren't aware of. Very old technology, like I said. This has been around since the 40s. Look it up. These aren't conspiracies. You can look up the patents on a lot of these different things that exist. False sun machines, cloud machines. They have patents for all this stuff. These aren't conspiracy theories. These things actually exist and were already created. When you deal with technology, invention, and patents and stuff, you learn a lot because you are privy to information that everybody is not privy to. So they give you things that you got to be responsible with and not show other people, that have to do with other people's ventures that are close to yours. So that's a normal practice. So when we do things that are spiritual, funerals, which is just a ritual, how we meet in church and do the prayer and all that, these are all just rituals. If you do not think that you're doing a ritual and you're a Christian or anything like that, then why do you think you stand in a circle and hold hands? Close your eyes, bow your head, and start saying stuff. You don't understand that that's a ritual? You really think that what you're doing is different from what everybody else is doing? And not only that, but you're doing the one right thing when everything else is supposed to be incorrect? Come on, man. Don't be so full of yourself. That's ego. That's very egotistical to think that way. Very limiting as well with your thought process. It's gonna limit you. So, and I'll bring this up because it's related. I know a lot of people were with the Nipsey Hussle death and the funeral, right? This is something they showed on TV. If I don't know if you noticed, and you can go back and watch this. When his mother got on stage, she started doing something called libations. Now, you had all these celebrities, rappers, everybody was there. All these black people. But nobody knew what she was actually doing on stage in front of everybody. When I saw her doing that, I knew what time it was. When I saw her doing libations, I said, oh, this is a ritual. They're doing it right in front of everybody. She was taking a bottle of water, she was pouring the water out, and she was saying the names of some of our ancestor energies. That is called libations. Now, I'm going to tell you the purpose of this. I told you, these talks are going to get deeper now. The purpose of libation, normally you can use alcohol to do libations or you can use water because energies and spirits are always around running water. If you want to attract any kind of energy, running water. Water is life. It is a certain type of energy. It is the most conductive energy on the realm. That's why if you run electricity through it, it slides right through it. Quicker than anything else. So you being an electronic being, you got to understand that even your spirit, these things are linked to electricity. I'll get into that later. This is realm talk. So she was on stage pouring the water and saying the names of the ancestors and saying Ashe. after each name. If you don't understand this stuff, this is an ancient practice from our people that when somebody passed on that was an ancestor, there was a way to invite them into the situation or wherever you were. So what she was doing was inviting the ancestors in on the funeral. Now, when I say ancestors, a lot of people get spooked. They're like, okay, spirits, demons, and all that. I got to start breaking this stuff down. I have to. And I'm trying to give it to you as plainly as possible, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The ancestors are everything and anybody that came before you in your bloodline. We know that blood is made of crystals. We know that crystals are their own mystic energy in this realm. Crystals are alive, as is everything else. A rock is alive. Everything is alive that comes from Earth. It's Earth. Earth is alive. Think about it. Right? This is Mother Earth. You see all that grass growing and trees growing, it ain't going to grow off of something that's dead. Right? So, doing the libations invites the ancestors' energy in on a situation. Now, the ancestors are within you, as is everything that came before you, or you wouldn't be here. So you got to understand, when people are saying these different names of the past, those weren't all actual people. Sometimes the name is just denoting something energetic. This is called a personification. If I looked at something back in the day and called it good, and I wanted to make that last forever, that energy, I would personify it. I would name it, and I would treat it like it was alive. Now, this is where a lot of people get confused with these gods and goddesses and stuff like that, because they can't understand that a lot of these things are just energetic personifications, not actual people. This is why I don't advocate for religion, because most people involved in religion have no idea what that stuff is, where it comes from, and what they're doing. Anybody involved in religion is worshiping the sun, first of all. Prove me wrong. Many places in your Bible it says, I am the sun. Now, I had a lot of studies I was going to give on this, but I was reluctant to shock the Christians in such a heavy way, because first of all, the average Christian has cognitive dissonance, and he cannot separate what they were taught from what is. They cannot separate what they were told from new information. They cannot do it. It will drive them mad just trying to understand something new, because to get something new, you got to tear away from what was old, right? First, you have to empty your cup. You have to empty your cup. If your cup's already full, you get nothing. You won't get it. My cup runneth over, right? We have to understand what we're talking about with a lot of these allegories and analogies. So a lot of times we're misunderstanding these personifications. We're taking them as these things we call gods and whatnot. That's all nonsensical. It's all nonsense. Why do you think there's a capital G and a lowercase g depending on what God you're talking about? That's ego. That's the European's ego saying, hey, the one we gave you is the right one. Come on, man. Really? Big G, little g? You got to understand that if you're even calling something else a God, it is what it is. What is God? What is that? Did you know the word God comes from, through etymology, it comes from the German word gut, which only means good? Now, why do you think in Christian church they say God is good all the time, and all the time God is good? They told you the damn truth. You're just too blind and too deaf to take it in. You don't have eyes to see and ears to hear. Why do you think the same book you're reading is telling you those that have eyes to see and ears to hear? They're saying that in the book that you're reading. What does that tell you? That tells you that the majority of the people reading the book don't have the eyes and the ears, correct? You see how that works? The word God only means good. Everything that was deemed as good was accounted to God. It's not a person. It's not a master spirit. It is everything you're looking at when you go outside and every person you see. If you put everything you see all together with every person you see, there's your God. You're included. So is Jimmy that you hate down the street. He's God too. Now, I know a lot of this stuff is going to be a little bit mind-blowing to some people, but it is what it is. Why do you think in Chinese culture, when they see each other, they bow to each other? Do you know what that means? The bow only represents the acknowledgement that the Godhead or the Joker, and I'll explain that, is playing many magnificent roles. And when they see you, they instantly bow to you. They don't have to know who you are. They bow to you to acknowledge that the creator or the God in you is playing a masterful role at playing whoever you think you are. That is what that bow actually means. It is an acknowledgement that the God in me sees the God in you, and you are playing a masterful role. Congratulations. You see, you got to know that we're all the creator. So far from creation that we have forgotten that we are that. That is what this experience is about. It's about memory. It's about remembering, putting the members back together, becoming whole. That is the mission. You have to know yourself. Biggest struggle of this place is not knowing yourself. So I kind of went off a little bit with the gods and the personifications, so we'll get more into that because I'm going to be doing series on this stuff, man. It's going to be coming back to back because I got a lot of stuff I need to go ahead and let out so you can see why I say what I say. So doing libations not only acknowledges the ancestors, but I'm going to tell you what's more important about inviting your ancestral energies in on your situations. Why is it important to do libations? Oh, yeah, and when they say Ashe after each name, Ashe just means you're welcome to be here. It's not as mystical as people think this stuff is. It's no different than a Christian doing a prayer and saying Amen at the end, and they don't understand and understand that all they're saying is Amen Ra. Once again, that is sun worship. All you're doing is saying Amen Ra at the end of a prayer to send it straight to the sun. Great. If that's getting you somewhere, great. Keep it up. Sometimes it's not what you believe in that gets you somewhere. Sometimes it's just believing. Sometimes it's just believing. So, doing the libation not only acknowledges the ancestors, but it blocks and protects the melanated people from the doings of the white man. It blocks them from using our spiritual abilities to infiltrate our communities. We invite the ancestors in on the unseen realm. You see, if you didn't want somebody to come into your house on the visible realm, what do? You stand in front of your door, you block it. If you want to do that on the unseen, you invite the unseen. Does that make sense? So this is why she was doing the Ashe rituals at the funeral. Just for example, if you think people don't know about this stuff, you better realize they're doing it right in front of your face, and it's you that don't know about it. Most people don't even know what a funeral is about. It is a ritual. Period. It's not about the person that used to be in the body. It's not about the spirit that no longer inhabits the body. This is a ritual for the body, acknowledging the work that the body did when the spirit was in it. It's a ritual. It's a going ritual. It's an acknowledgement. It's respect to what the person did when the person was whole, spirit, mind, and body. It's not important what you do with the body afterwards. See, you got to study history and know why we're doing what we're doing and where it comes from. That funeral stuff comes from ancient Kemet. I have a book called the Book of the Dead, which is actually a Kemetic book of our people, our ancestors, why they did what they did, their funeral arrangements, why the people were wrapped up, what a lot of the hieroglyphics on the wall mean, and how these are just stories. And the book was really meant for a priest, a high priest to have, because it was a ritualistic book of how to deal with the deceased and what happens after and what everybody believed in and where those beliefs came from. It's very important to have books like that because it only shows you where they got the same beliefs that they're putting in the Bible and these other religious books. You got to remember that the Bible is one of the newest religious books that exists. Christianity is one of the newest religions that exists. It is the newest main religion that exists. But they claim to be the beginning of everything. This is my problem with it. It's not being explained and it's being misused, the information. So you got to understand that we can be infiltrated through our spiritual abilities in the unseen. And now if you say, oh, well, that's all mystical, I don't know about this unseen spirits and ghosts and stuff. Okay, well, this is the same knowledge that sometimes your friends or people that you're around, how some of them, stay. Think about that friend that always acts the same. He's always in the same energy, he or she. Don't you know that your friends and people that you keep around or that you stay around that are always in a certain energy can actually bring you into another dimension without knowledge of even doing so? This is just the knowledge of somebody's energy affecting your energy. It's just that simple. So you have to separate yourself, or we have to separate ourselves from what's called or what's known as the succubus, or what they call the vampire energy, which is just people that want your energy, need your energy. Where do you think the knowledge of vampires come from? You think all this stuff just came about one day and they made 1,000,001 vampire movies because vampires just were made up and they made up the right thing and it ended up being super popular? Come on, man. To be totally honest and transparent with you, the vampire energy was supposed to represent the European. That's what that was actually supposed to represent. And I'm not just talking about the fact that they were practicing cannibalism long before we even heard of it. Because guess what? Some people in ancient Africa and Kemet was probably doing that too. And this is partly where you get the whole ritual of communion. When they tell you to act like this is the blood and act like this is the body, that's cannibalism, bro. You had no idea you was in there doing a ritual. That's why they tell you your heart and mind got to be into it. Because you're doing a ritual. You're doing something that's going to affect you spiritually. Period. That is ritualistic in nature. So we got to understand how to separate from the diversions of other people. The energy of other people. And it's not always the actual person. It's a lot of times just their energy. Now, this is the same thing I'm telling you about the ancient gods and stuff that were personified. They weren't all actual people. They were represented by energy that we named and personified. We gave the energy of personality. So it's not always them. A lot of times it's just their energy. So I want to remind you that being what they call dead isn't always the same as being deceased. There's a lot of dead people walking around you right now. Now, I didn't plan on getting into this part. I'm not going to go too deep into it on this episode. But this is also why you have zombies. Again, do you think they just created something and they made 1,000,001 zombie movies because The Walking Dead just happens to be something that is very popular and took off? Come on, man. Don't be naive. Don't be naive. Everything that is so-called quote unquote successful came from something that was real. You better realize that first and be trying to find the real version of some of this stuff that you into. Because 9 times out of 10, you got the bootleg version. And you think it's real. Now, so many of y'all can tell the difference between a fake Louis purse and a real one. Fake Jordans and real ones. But you can't tell the difference between fake knowledge and real knowledge. That says a lot. So, I want you to also understand that I'm going to finish this little part about the zombies. The Walking Dead is reference to us. Now, this goes into maritime law. This goes into what they call the law of the sea. And how that correlates with the laws of the land. You need to look this stuff up because the spirit realm led me all the way around into maritime law, Saturn and everything else, all the way back around to the gods and the Sumerians, the Star of David and everything else, all the way back around to secret societies and religions. And then that brought me all the way into corporate structure because all these things are based on the same things. They all trace back to the same places. Christianity is a fake religion. It is not the knowledge of the Bible. Remember, the Bible is comprised of ancient scripts from all time, all sources, combined into a master story. Remember, they told you, it is the greatest story ever told. The false Messiah. Even in Deuteronomy, they say, they give you the tale that we will be controlled by a people that is not a people. You know how they say that in Deuteronomy? We will be controlled by a people that is not a people. Again, I hate talking about race so much, but it is what it is. Now, who do you think they're talking about? The people that are not a people. Those are the Caucasians. And again, I know I seem to talk about that a lot, but a lot of this place is based on this stuff. Why do you think in the early parts of the Bible they start talking about separating the black sheep from the white sheep and all that? Man, if you don't understand code, that's about genetics. That was the knowledge of showing you that they knew how to mess with genetics back then. Not in the Bible days, but where they got that from. There were no Bible days. Have you ever heard of or met anyone related to anyone in the Bible? Have you ever even heard of that? Like somebody say, well, Moses was my great. Nah, you never heard of it and you never will. You'll never hear of descendants from the Bible because it's not real. And a lot of the different characters were actually the same character. Solomon, Samson, Jesus, Joseph. A lot of these people was one archetype, one prototype that they all came from. So during these next episodes, I'm going to be breaking all this stuff down. You're going to have your pad and your pen with you because I'm going to give you a lot. So you got to understand too that all knowledge is hidden in the Bible. It's extremely coded, extremely distorted, and extremely misleading on purpose. Why do you think there's so many versions and translations? Because it's like that only because clarity would be the same as being naked and everything would be exposed. Why do you think that people that's doing shady stuff never want to be transparent? You got to give it away. Complication is the sign of trickery. A solution is always simple. So if something came back complicated, just realize it's not the solution. Revelation is something else people know about the Bible is that Revelation is actually the oldest book in the Bible. And Genesis was actually the newest. Even though they got Genesis first and Revelation last, that's only because of the knowledge of what those words represent. It has nothing to do with the timeline. You see? Revelation is the oldest book in the Bible. Genesis is the newest book. But this is why Genesis is the newest book, because it tied the story together. It was the last book they put in the Bible, but you see it as the first one because it says in the beginning. But it's really more so based on religion or religion or pledging allegiance to a certain belief system. So when you get into Genesis, you're talking about Genesis, the beginning, the beginning of an organism, the beginning of something alive, the genesis or the genetics. Revelation only comes from the word revolution, which only means a complete cycle. Now you see why it's at the end and why Genesis is at the beginning? Because it's symbolic to what it really means. It has nothing to do with essentially the way they gave it to you. That's a total misunderstanding, and it's a misappropriation of the knowledge. And that's what bothers me the most is that people are following this stuff. My people are following this stuff, and they are basing their spirits and souls on this stuff. That is extremely dangerous. So I'm going to break down a few things that go together, and I'm just going to give them to you quick. I'm going to speed this up a bit because it's going to be a lot of information on these upcoming episodes. I'm going to try to do an hour at a time. So we know that etymology is basically the layers behind the illusion. It's what you thought you had until you looked deeper. Then you saw more meaning. You saw origin. So we have to understand now that everything here in this realm is a copy of the original. Everything we have now is just a copy. Right? Everything we're doing is some type of misinterpretation. So let's talk about the knowledge of the breath cycle again, because I've done breathing, but I want to tie this in with religion. The knowledge of the breath cycle, or the actual cycle of breathing, on levels familiar as the body, or on a larger scale, such as the universe or the interverse or the galaxy, which is all breathing. You see? The 1,000 years of the Bible being decoded was, they said Satan was supposed to be in the devil, or whoever was supposed to be in hell for 1,000 years. And what you might not have realized is that the 1,000 years of the in hell was only representing the breath cycle of the actual universe. This is deeper knowledge. This is why when you breathe in, it's called inhale. This is why when you breathe out or a sigh of relief, or make the sigh of relief, right, you exhale. I told you before, the word nirvana means heaven. Nirvana, also loosely translated, sounds like whew. The same sound someone makes when they escape a situation that could have been worse. That's nirvana. That's heaven because you have exhale. Come on, man. So the 1,000 years inhale was the whole inhale exhale code. We're talking about the signs and the stars. We're talking about the Gemini when we talk about the twins. This is the knowledge that gave you the Adam and the Eve, right? It's that whole knowledge from the sky. So what I'm going to do real quick to end this episode, I'm going to give you some supreme mathematics. I'm going to show you something. Because this all ties in with sun worship. It all ties in with the sun, the moon, all these other things that people have falsified and given us the information. We have no means of checking these things, so we just simply believe what they're telling us. That is a problem. So I'm going to give you this real quick. You write this down. This is the knowledge of the squared circle. If you're a Mason or have Mason knowledge, you know what the squared circle is. It's very deep knowledge of geomancy, which is the knowledge of using exact dimensions in shapes to form certain objects, right? This would be dimensionally accurate shapes. So the squared circle, just to show you why that's so powerful in the Masonic world or people that try to use energy to do what they call magic. A square is made of 4 90-degree angles. 4 90-degree angles comes out to 360 degrees. The way they gave you 360 degrees was in a circle. This is what's called the squared circle. This is knowledge. So the same 360 degrees that gives you a circle also gives you a square. Now, I'm not going to go too deep on that, but if you look up the squared circle, you can get more knowledge on that. You can get more supreme mathematics on that. Now, why is this important? You have the sun, the moon, and the earth. You have the diameter and the radius of each. Now, if you understand mathematics, you know that the diameter is going to give you the complete circumference. If you do the radius will be half of the diameter. Always. So watch these numbers. The diameter of the sun, 864,000 miles. That makes the radius of the sun 432,000 miles. The diameter of the moon, 2,160 miles. The radius of the moon, 1,080. That's the 1080. This is where you get the 1080i and all that for your TVs. The diameter of the Earth is 7,920. The radius is 3,960. Now, if you add up any of the numbers I gave you, they're all going to equal either 3, 6, or 9. I'll get into that later. This is the Nikola Tesla who discovered the 369 code of the universe. This goes into my frequency and vibration episode. So if you add up any of those, you get the 369. That's not the kicker. The moon has 6 phases. Times 360 is where you get the 2160, which is the diameter of the moon. The 6 phases times wholeness. You get the diameter of the moon, half of that, which is the radius, you get 1080. These are not coincidence what I'm showing you. The sun. Now we know that the sun is what they use to link with time and control our days and nights. This is how they give you the numbers. This is how they get the numbers for what the sun is, radius and diameter. They're not real. They have not measured these things. How do you think they would have measured it? Think about it. Can't even get close to the sun if that's the case. So when you take 60 seconds in a minute, you take 60 minutes in an hour, you take 24 hours in a day. 60 times 24. What do you get? 86,400. Why does that sound familiar? Because I just told you a while ago that the diameter of the sun that they give you is 864,000. It is the 864. So again, when you take that same sun measurement, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, which is still 666, you get the 86400. 86,400. I'll give you more math on this on the next episode. It's getting close to an hour, so I'm going to wrap this one up. But I just wanted to show you that these numbers and stuff that they're coming up with are easily calculated other ways. They are not the truth. So this has been the first episode of My 3 Cents where we're going to try to go deeper in. I'm going to try to do a whole series with religion, with coding, decoding, supreme mathematics, genetics, DNA is included in that. And then we're going to have a melanin episode as well. So thank you for hitting this episode again, and I will see you. All right, I'm back. So I got a little cut off on the end of the last episode, or the last part of this episode. I'm going to do these episodes in at least 2 parts because, like I said, with these, we're going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to take you all the way out there and bring you all the way back just to show you a lot of these connections that I've been able to run into and confirm on different levels, and just give you some stuff to look into to show you how this whole thing works and give you that insight. And pretty much what you're here to kind of find out and listen to anyway, right? You want to hear something a little different, a different take on some of these things. And obviously I'm going to give you some things that nobody's going to give you, because once people find out great information and understand that information is power, they like to hold on to it or charge you for it. So once they get it, they like to use it. Once you figure out something, you don't go and tell everybody right away, right? You start using it yourself so that you can get rich, and then you show them. So that's what a lot of people do. So let's just jump right back in it. I know the last thing I was saying was I was doing the mathematics, just showing you a little bit of universal mathematics, why they say that math is the universal language. We were talking about the sun and the moon, the radius and the diameters. And if you wrote that down, I'm going to run through it real quick again. And just to show you where they come up with the numbers, why the numbers match up. And later on, I'll show you what those numbers are linked to, as far as the 369 code that Nikola Tesla figured out, and the frequency and vibration of everything, right? So I'm going to take you way out there. Like I said, this is going to be a lot of information that'll give you a lot of jumping points to find out more of whatever you want to get into, whether it's the genetics part. I'll get on the DNA a little bit in this one. So yeah, whatever that is, this should give you good jump off points to start looking up things that you just may not have ever thought to look up and get into because it didn't maybe interest you. So I'm showing you how all those things do relate to you, whether it's here on what they call Earth or in the heavens, right? How all these things relate to you. So going back to the sun and the moon, I first talked about the squared circle, which is a type of mathematical, it's a shape that is kind of using a mathematical anomaly, because both shapes are represented at 360 degrees, which is wholeness, right? Which is also a part of the 369 code, because 3 and 6 is 9. So that's why that number is so important anyway, the 360. So as far as the squared circle, the way they've given most people the 360 is a circle or a round, something that went around, a cycle. 360 degrees. It could even, something that even turns around, right? You can stand there and spin around 360 degrees yourself. You don't have to be a circle. So it's more so about the energy of going that direction, right? And coming completely back around. That's what that's all about. So you have the circle or the roundabout that they give you, and then you have the square, which is made of 490-degree angles, which would also give you the 360 degrees, right? This also works with the triangle. This also works with the triangle. So it's a lot of different ways to play with the numbers to get these shapes Shapes are the key to everything, the key to mathematics. Everything that you experience in this realm is based on shapes, based on measurements, and based on numbers. Everything you look at when you look around the room right now is based on numbers. Everything is. That is the supreme math. That is the universal language, and it is the most effective way to communicate something is to calculate it and have its precise dimensions. That's how you communicate things. If I want to give you something, if I want to give you a shape over the phone, I can give you its dimensions. You see what I'm saying? I can give you its degrees. And now you can recreate that exact thing and it will be exact. So this is the knowledge of, math is very powerful when it comes down to knowledge and information. The math is very key. Very key. Remember, when you're born, you're born right into a social security number and birth certificates. They got all your numbers and all kind of stuff. We'll talk about that too another time, but you are immediately represented by numbers. So you got to understand what this is all about and how it goes down all the way into your DNA and the different codes that actually create you in this bodily form. There's codes to this. The body isn't just some type of random device. It's actually very calculated. It's very extremely calculated when it comes down to the numbers. The space between the beats of the heart. All these things are calculated. And when you look and understand these calculations, you start to recognize things like the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. You start to recognize phi and all kind of things that you didn't realize were incorporated with you. All the different type of things that they have you learning or not telling you about are mainly the things that are mostly involved with you as a being. That's the stuff they don't want to give you. That's the stuff you got to find yourself. Some type of way, you got to get on the path of really knowing yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, remember, we didn't come with manuals. So if you don't know yourself, and if you're not making an effort to get to know yourself even better, you ain't really going to get nowhere. You're not going to progress. You'll never experience yourself at your best. You'll never experience the best, whatever that is for you, unless you lower your standards. So you got to get to know yourself first. How can you make moves if you don't even know what you're capable of? You're unpredictable to yourself. Would you do business with somebody that was unpredictable and you didn't know what they were capable of? No, you wouldn't. So why would you do business with yourself? So it's a lot of inner conflict that happens like that, where you're trying to function on the outside through the frontal cortex and you don't understand that you got deep-rooted issues in the back that are running in the background, just like the computer. You got these programs running in the background, and what happens? It slows down the main part of the computer that you're trying to use, the foreground, the screen. It slows it down. It glitches. So it's the same thing. And this is what I'm showing you. A lot of things are just the same thing. So getting back into the mathematics real quick so we can jump into what I really wanted to talk about. That was the knowledge of the square circle, why it's important to the Masons, different people, the knowledge back in the day, right? Shapes are very important. Mathematics are very important. So that being said, when you get to the sun, the moon, and the earth, you have the diameter, you have the radius, which is always going to be half of the diameter. So I'm going to show you how they get these numbers once again. The sun, the diameter is 864,000 miles. The radius is 432,000 miles. Moon, the diameter is 2,160 miles. The radius is 1,080 miles. Earth, 7,920 miles. That is the diameter. The radius is 3,960. Now, the first thing I want you to see is that with each of those numbers I just gave you, if you add any of them up individually, any set, you're going to get 3, 6, or 9. So you already got to see the codes that they're using when they give you these numbers. They didn't go and measure the moon or the sun or any of that. They're just giving you estimates that they came up with. But when you understand that their estimates are falling into supreme mathematics and different things that they're using that involve the 369 code, the universe, frequency, and vibration, then you understand that this is planned. This is orchestrated. This is not just random numbers. That is the point of me sharing this with you. So when you have all those diameters and radiuses, now let's go down to the sun, and I'm going to show you how the sun relates to time and how they've made the relation. It's a very simple calculation. When you have the 60 seconds in a minute, you have 60 minutes in an hour, you have 24 hours in a day. This is what they're telling you is the complete cycle of how the sun cooperates, right? So when you take the 60 times 24, you get 86,400. Why does that look familiar? Because when you go back to the diameter of the sun, you see 864,000. So the knowledge is the 864 code. And like I told you before, everything you add up is going to be a 3, 6, or a 9. Now, when you understand gematria and different things, you can know why numbers are very important. If you understand the Bible and you're into that, then you need to understand why things have scripture numbers and chapter numbers. That was not always like that. That was added for a reason. Those are also codes. That's why you have a book called Numbers in the Bible. You don't understand that where this stuff comes from with the Hebrew, the Torah, and these different books. This stuff was coded a different way. When you get into Hebrew, you understand that their shapes actually represent numbers, not words. You can make them represent words as well, but it's a very complicated way to break that down because Hebrew shapes, when they go into word form, they're multiple words. And then you have to look up each word in the group and come to some type of conclusion. But if you go into number form, it goes directly into a number. Numbers have energy. Numbers represent things already. That is why it is the universal code. 0 is wholeness. 1 is the singularity. It is the one. It represents the source. 2 represents the split or the duality. 3 represents balance. That's why you have the tripod and things like that. You can't stand things up on 2 legs. Now that's a whole other conversation. We're talking about how the human does it. But that's supposed to show you something else about yourself. But the 4 always represents a door. The 5 always represents nature or phi. The 6 always represents sex or the sexes or the male and the female agenda, because the 6 and the 9 are just the inverted versions of each other. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. The 7 represents the completion of the cycles. It's a smaller cycle, but it is a cycle completion. Just like the 7 chakra or the 7 days in a week. This is why they give you that kind of stuff. You see, the 7 days, you're dazed. You're in the days all week, you're weak. All week, you're dazed until the weekend when you're weakened and all you want to do is rest. All this stuff is like this for a reason. It's not random. There's nothing random. If you're a calculated creature, how you have been created, how can you create something random out of something calculated? That would be an illusion. The 8 represents infinity. It's only an infinity symbol. It represents going around and coming back around. The 9 represents the completion of a cycle. Again, a larger cycle. That's why the 9 is represented with birth and the 9 months. If you want to get into that, you start breaking down the year, you have the 12 months. Well, every 90 days is 3 months. This is the 369 code. The 12 months is just another 3. This is all related to the same stuff. That's what I'm going to be showing you. Every 90 days, things change as far as in the heavens with the stars and the planets and stuff aligning. People that ain't into that, they say, well, I don't believe in that. Well, how do you believe in the weather? How do you believe in the seasons changing if you don't believe in looking up and understanding that energy up there affects the energy down here? As above, so below. You got to come about it in belief systems because they got you sounding ignorant when you reject things that you are into. you're not into mysticism, but you watch weather reports where they're trying to tell you what's going to happen Friday? Why is it that you give them the ability to tell you what's going to happen next week, but you can't get into the knowledge of where that even comes from? Because it's against your religion. So every 90 days, just to give you this knowledge, days also means degrees. Degrees. 90 days is 90 degrees of movement above you. See? 90 degrees. What is 90 times 4? What is 9 times 4? 36. So every 90 days or 90 degrees times those 4 sections give you 360. The complete cycle. A year. See? All this stuff is rigged like this on purpose. And a lot of people just don't see it because they're not into looking at it. They're busy. They're too busy. So I just wanted to give you that to show you that the numbers they come up with and give you and tell you how far the sun is, and it has to make sense to you on a simple level as far as why you seeing both of them in the sky and how they relate to each other. They want to try to hurry up and make it make sense to you so you don't ask questions, right? They tell you that the moonlight is the sunlight reflected. That makes no sense. That totally makes no sense, especially if you believe in the round earth, then that totally makes no sense. Because that means that one thing has to be on one side while the other thing is on the other side. And if that's true, how could it reflect off each other? Not only that, but we live in Florida, and a lot of times, pretty much every day, we go outside and we see the sun and the moon up at the same time. So, you know, if it's a ball like that and we got the sun and the moon, what would the other side have? Nothing. But a lot of people don't question stuff like that. It seems too absurd based upon what you already believe. It's not that it sounds crazy. It just sounds crazy based upon what you was already indoctrinated with. So you got to go against yourself first. That's a battle not many of us are willing to have. Scared of ourselves. So I wanted to cover that again and just talk about the numbers for a second and show you that even going into Hebrew and different cultures, these numbers mean a lot more than people realize. Even getting into the knowledge of what they call God, if you are into the Bible and stuff, you got to understand that what you call God in the Bible with the capital G is what the ones before the Bible, the Hebrew, is what they called tetragrammaton. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. Tetragrammaton. And it was so wild when I found this a couple years ago when I got to this level of the knowledge, and I said, wow, I've traced it back to what it was before. And I was very shocked at what I found the tetragrammaton was. I was extremely shocked at what I found. I don't even know if I want to tell you. Just look it up. I don't know. It encompasses all things. It's a calculation. And it's directly linked to what they call Yahweh. And that's the same thing. It's just put into that form, the YHWH, which is really HWHY, because remember, the Hebrew language and all other country languages are read from right to left. English is one of the only ones read from left to right. It's backwards. We're the only ones that read backwards. But again, you don't find that strange because you were taught to read that way. That's why our language has the word backwards in it. Backwards. Why would that even exist, that term? See? So, Yahweh led me to Tetragrammaton. And it was all Hebrew. It was all everything that, that's a majority of where the Bible got its information. And in a lot of Bibles, it actually references Tetragrammaton. It actually says it in the Bible. Most of the time, it's at the preface of the Bible. If you read the sections that are before the scriptures, it'll give you a lot of information. It talks about Queen Elizabeth. It mentions Tetragrammaton. Oh, yeah. Osiris is even mentioned in the Bible, but it's under a name that you wouldn't recognize if you haven't studied actual history of that kind of stuff and understand how the names and the words, they mess with a little bit depending on what text they're putting them in. So, Tetragrammaton, look it up. So let's get into a little bit of something different. Since we're talking about the Bible, I want to reference and just decode something. That's what we're going to talk about, a lot of codes. Something in the Old Testament that a lot of people aren't aware of. It refers to the land of Nod, if you've ever heard of this, the land of Nod. This is where Cain went when he killed Abel, right? This in the story. The land of Nod. I'm just going to show you something real quick. Now, the Bible only mentions the land of Nod one time. And there's a reason I choose this, because I'm a dreamer. I'm a heavy dreamer. Every time I sleep, I dream. I've had that since I was very young. This is how I came upon this knowledge. I've had that on me since I was extremely young. Every single time I fall asleep, I go straight into some type of dream. So I've dreamed of everything. I don't think there's anything I haven't. I'm going to do a dream episode one day. Just talk about dreams. Because I've dreamed of everything. So anyways, the study of that type of phenomena is what brought me around to this. Because it took me to old knowledge of dreams, and it took me to an older knowledge that explained the reference in the Bible, which was the land of Nod, having to do with Cain and Abel, which to even understand that, you would have to know that this was a metaphysical story about the body and about you. I told you this was going to get a little bit more complicated with what I'm talking about and referencing. So you got to understand that even going back to, let me just do this now, even going back to the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve and the snake, you got to understand that, remember, this was not the beginning of the world that they're referencing in this book. When it says in the beginning, and I told you, Genesis was the last book put in the Bible. It is the newest book that they put in because it was the book that started the story off great. They wanted to finish the compilation of the story and then add the beginning of the story. That just, that's almost genius, right? And I explained to you before, I believe, why Revelation was at the end, because it only means revolution or completed cycle or circle or wholeness or whatever, however you want to reference it. So it's a lot of codes all up and through the Bible, especially dealing with the verses. A lot of times you can know the energy of what they're really talking about based on the verse numbers, breaking the numbers down and then collapsing them like they would do in Jewish gematria. See, this is why they added that stuff, because these are their own codes that you don't understand. You just think that they're numbering the verses. There would be no reason to do that. Not this way, not the way that they've done it. It's another code. It's being used two ways, like a double entendre. It's just something that means more than one thing at the same time. So, as far as with the Garden of Eden, which is only representation of the genesis or genetics or the beginning of Earth, a living thing, it was only a representation of that. So Earth always also represents the body. That's why a lot of times they say the body of Earth, but the knowledge is really that the Earth is the body. Remember, the Earth is the heart, is represented by the heart as well, which is also the green heart chakra. Everything green. That's why, Earth represents itself in the color green. That's why also money is green, because it is also that same type of energy, right? So As far as Eden, that is the representation of that. The Adam and the Eve was a representation of the creation of the being, the human, right? This was only talking about the atom, which is what a lot of the study was about back then, um, as far as the churches, the scientists, and the different cultures and stuff that came before all this religion. A lot of the study was based on the atom and the knowledge of that, man. And a lot of people don't know this stuff, right? They think that they're talking about a person named Adam. That's not what that's about. They're talking about the atom. You see, when you understand how yourself works, you can understand the universe. Atom, within the atom, which is why they tell you they removed the rib or the bone from Adam. This is only knowledge of something else. Remember, the rib cage is similar to, as far as how it looks, is very similar to the genetic or the DNA strand. So you gotta understand the codes of this stuff. Within the atom, you have the Eve mitochondria, right? This is something that is within the atom. This is not, there's no, woman did not come from man. She is the womb man. She is the one that encompasses and creates man. And when you really get deep into the knowledge, it wasn't man and woman that came first. It was mother and son. It was the crescent moon that you see on a lot of flags and in a lot of different cultures. A lot of people understand what that represents. That's on multiple flags in multiple places. That's knowledge. That came from somewhere. The moon represents the mother. The star represents the sun. This is the Ma-sun connection. This is where they get the Masons. It's a higher knowledge that people not understanding. This is metaphysical stuff. But it's reference to our creation on higher levels than people saying you came from monkeys and stuff like that. This is what they're giving our kids in school. So we're talking about genetics. We're talking about the snake. You're talking about, again, that's Kundalini. You're talking about the tree of life. You're talking about the spine, the spinal cord, the spinal column, the central nervous system, how it looks like an upside down tree. You got to know yourself. So again, any reptile referenced in ancient texts or any old text is really just talking about whether it's a snake, a dragon, whatever that is. That's always referencing the chakra systems, energy, the Kundalini. It's always referencing the same thing. Even with I just thought about this, the show Dragon Ball Z, right? That's even what this type of stuff is about. They have to collect the 7 Dragon Balls. What happens after that? After they collect the 7. When they collect the 7, which is only a representation of the 7th chakra, the dragon shows up. This is Kundalini. This is how once you have centered yourself and become balanced, that type of energy can arise now and grant your wish, right? You can have whatever you want as far as manifesting or whatever else type of energy you're trying to put off. You'll be successful at doing it when you have that backing you up. Now, when you're talking about the metaphysical, you're talking about the Kundalini. When you're talking about what is the Kundalini in the physical, it is a nerve called the vagus nerve or the vagus nerve. Look it up. It is a nerve that floats throughout the body and touches each of your organs, goes down to your stomach, helps your stomach with knowledge so that the stomach knows where to put things, what to process into the bloodstream, and what to get rid of. This nerve jumps all around through your body and does work. This is what is assisting your chakras, which are those energies located within your organs, which also correlate to the planets, since I'm going all the way in, also correlate to the planets. The planets are your organs as well. It's just an outside version. This is why things that happen above you energetically can have an effect on you down here. As above, so below. As within, so without. So whatever's in you is also outside of you, being perceived outside of you anyway. How you deal with things should be how you deal with yourself, always. To thine own self be true. If you're true to yourself, doesn't that mean that you're by default true to everybody else? Because you as a being are true with self? This is how all is reflection. That's what I'm telling you. Every situation you're dealing with, whether it's somebody cutting you off in traffic or whatever it is, every situation you're dealing with is that. It's you. All is reflection. You attracted it. So let's get back to the dreams in the land of Nod. Why I reference that is because I'm sure you know what I'm getting at by now. This is why you nod off. The land of Nod is not a place. This is why they tell you in the Bible that, this is why when people talk about it, they say, well, it never references where it is. We don't know where it is. It just says it's east of Eden. That's all we know. Well, you got to understand what that means. Now that I showed you what Eden means, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, which is the atom, and the Eve mitochondria, the snake, which is Kundalini, the tree of life, which is the spine. This is all metaphorical and metaphysical. So then you get to what this stuff actually represents. What's the point of it? You see? And you stop seeing it as just a story and understand that it's also instructions, but it has to be decoded. That's the only way knowledge can be passed down. It has to be decoded. This is why blueprints exist. That is the destruction of something, the deconstruction. This is the code to reconstruct. It's the key. So when you're talking about Cain and Abel and stuff like this, you're talking about two sides of man. This is all you're talking about. You're talking about how one side wins over the other side, and how it was important to reference how what we would say the lower vibration, which would have been Cain, will win over Abel or ability, which is the higher vibration. Right? So when you, in the Bible, when it mentions the land of Nod, it only mentions it once, and it's after Cain murders Abel, Genesis 4 and 8. Now, since I've been talking about numbers, Genesis 4 and 8, that's 12, that's 3, that's balance. This is a reference of energetic balance. When Cain murdered Abel, this was a type of balance. This is the knowledge that you can't just be one way. You can't just be one way. What's known as love is also the adverse, whatever you want to say the adverse of love is. Because what I'm telling you is that one is born of the other, so they are the same thing. When somebody takes away something you love, that rage or type of feeling that you get and that whole revenge scenario that you see with the movies, TV shows, and stuff like that is all based on that. You go out to seek revenge for your loved ones and vengeance, but that vengeance was based and born on love. So it's just the knowledge that a lot of these things are the same thing existing in different forms. This is metaphysics. We have to be able to think beyond the first layer of things. That's our problem now. We're so satisfied on the surface, we've become ultimately buoyant. You on top of the surface like a leaf on water. You gotta be able to get a little deeper, right? Add a little weight. So when Genesis 4 and 8 talks about how he went away and settled in a place called Nod, which was east of Eden. Now, when you talk about north, south, east, and west, whenever they reference this stuff in old texts, the east, what you might not realize, is a reference to the front of the body. Whenever they reference in a city or land, it is a reference to the body. The east is the front of the body. This is why they even pray to the east, because it is a reference to the front of the body. So when you look up into the east, you're looking through where the pineal gland comes through, what they would call the third eye, which scares a lot of people because it sounds mystical and mysterious, but it's only a reference to the pineal gland and how it protrudes the forehead at that spot. And how that spot, if you touch it sometimes, right above between the brows, is tender. If it's ever tender or giving you that front headache, it's because real knowledge is activating and stimulating your pineal gland. And you are being beckoned to kind of wake up and dig deeper. You're going to change. Real knowledge will change you. Because once you discover things, you can't undiscover them. The game changes. Ignorance was where the bliss was. See? A lot of things we don't want to know because we don't want to change. We're comfortable. It's time to get uncomfortable. So he settled in a place called Nod, east of Eden. They're telling you the frontal lobe. In his frontal lobe, this is east of Eden. He settled in a place called Nod. He went to sleep, people. This is the knowledge of someone who had an internal battle in the mind. The wrong side won. They did the wrong thing or made the wrong decision, right? Quote unquote. And went to sleep. Take a nap. Nod in Hebrew means wanderer, exile, or fugitive. After Cain killed his brother, God declared, among other things, that Cain will be a fugitive and a wanderer on earth. We already understand that earth is the body. God is the God mind. It is the highest point of self. It is Christ consciousness. These are the things I'm going to break down and go ahead and decode for you. Remember, he was called Jesus the Christ. The character was called Jesus the Christ. Not Jesus Christ. It was not a person. That is not his first and last name. This was an energy being personified. The Christ. Christ comes from the term Christo, which means sacred oil, which references the oils that are collected through the body and also the pineal gland, through the light bringer, through the Lucifer, which means the light bringer. This is also reference to the pineal gland. This is why when some people get deep off into the knowledge but can't explain it, will tell you Jesus and God and the devil are all the same thing. People will say, well, that's stupid. I don't understand that. And a person will have no ability to explain how all these things only come from the same thing. The same way I showed you that what love and hate is, a lot of these references are the same thing broken down into pure energetic forms where it does not contain the energy of its adverse side. It has been split off into its own energy, and we call that something different. That is all that is happening. So this was Jesus the Christ, which only represented the sacred oil, which is why even when they anoint you, they put that cross on your third eye. That is to block. They know what they are doing. That is a spiritual, energetic block. They put the X on your third eye. You say, no, it's a cross. Yeah, tilt it 30 degrees, 20 degrees. It's an X. This is all knowledge. Everybody's playing the game, but a lot of people don't realize they're playing the game, and they think that they're exempt from the game. It don't work that way. You're playing the game. You just don't know how. And the game is really playing you when you don't know how. So he went to the land of Nod, right? He was a fugitive and a wanderer in his own body. This is dream stage. This is Genesis 4 and 12, right? So with the 4 and the 12, we have 7. This is giving you the knowledge that when they talk about him being a fugitive wanderer on the earth, here's the 7 code. This is knowledge of, this is the body that they're referencing. It's about the energy of the body, the person going to sleep. Now you're wandering inside yourself. This is dreamland, the land of Nod, the 5th dimension. Now, when they talk about the land of Nod, it's in Genesis 4 and 16 when they reference it. So that's an 11. 4 and 16, that's 11. We already understand that through these numbers, 11 is a gate or a door. This is why people say, oh, I saw 1111, and I don't know what that means. Well, the only reason that you don't have to know what it means is the fact that it stood out to your psyche. It's because it does mean something. It's just you being signaled and catching something at the right time, right place, because that's a part of your storyline. You were supposed to see it. It's the why that we got to be more concerned with, and not be so surprised about the what sometimes. So a lot of people speculate about the whole Nod thing, but they have no answers because they're only looking at it from one direction. You see? And even in the end of that part of the scriptures, they tell you that Cain became a godless person, and the society that sprang from him and his descendants was godless. But even in the scripture where they say he became godless, guess what? It's a lowercase g. What does that mean? See? They're not talking about the God that they try to beat you over the head with and tell you that it's some type of energy that's watching over you in the sky or somewhere in the heavens. It's the God of man, which they understand that when they say he became godless, this is what I'm telling you. He fell from a higher point. That's all that really means. It's when a part of you gets the best of you and later on you feel some type of way and be like, man, I overreacted, or I really shouldn't have lashed out like that. That's what happened. Cain killed Abel. Every time that happens to you, that's Cain killing Abel. That's what that means. How do you move on from that? Let it go. And it's best to even have a dream. Because you got to remember that the dreams was the ancient information. That was the spiritual information back then. If somebody was a dreamer and you was dreaming, remember they had people that specialized in talking about the dreams and stuff in these books. And even in the Bible, they talk about how people decoded dreams and how that was extremely important. So you got to understand the reference of Nod through that. So I just wanted to give you that part of it. But yeah, Nod, when they talk about that, Cain in the land of Nod is just referencing the realm of sleep, or what we call the astral plane. And when you get into other books of knowledge, when they tell you that, they tell you also that it is said that only the most adept can go into the astral realm indefinitely. But even then, it breeds a certain level of madness because it is not stable. That's why you can be in a dream and all of a sudden this happens and you're there. Then all of a sudden you're somewhere else. And this whole thing just seems crazy. Right? Now, what I'm doing is showing you how going into the dreams and the symbolism, how all this stuff is related. I'm going to show you how all this is related. So the Bible we already went to, and now we're talking about the astral plane because we're talking about the land of Nod. And I'm showing you how the relations will keep taking you around different areas of knowledge. So that place is unstable, the astral realm, the dream realm. This is why earth is associated with trees and roots and ground. Is to also signify that one cannot just float and go into the abyss indefinitely. That is why we have a ground here. That's why they say when your energy is out of whack, what do they say? Ground yourself. You see? This is the knowledge of why this place is kind of the way it is. Trees represent roots. What does that represent in the metaphysical? That represents your memories. That represents what keeps you linked to this place. Because if you woke up without your memories, you would probably go insane, but not even know how to go insane because you wouldn't even know what that was. You wouldn't know anything. You look in the mirror and be dumbfounded. You'd be scared to put your feet on the floor. You wouldn't know what you were laying on. So you got to understand, memory is the strongest thing here. So watch what they try to keep you remembering. Black History Month. Be wary of what they try to keep you remembering. They're trying to keep you in one position. So this is why we expect to maintain our memories every day. So I'm showing you how to talk about the land of Nod through the Bible. This is a code, right? Took you to the astral plane, showed you that, and why Earth is the heart, which is why they say you can always come home And the heart is also where you anchor yourself, or this version of yourself. Here on this realm, the heart is how you anchor that. The heart is how you hold on to that version of self that you have for yourself. Right? So remember, again, anywhere in the world where you see them using the dragons or the snakes or the winged snake, that's all Kundalini. Most reptiles, you got to understand that the reason that they use the reptiles is because most reptiles have a pineal gland. Or that eye that's on the top of their head to detect predators above them. So their eye is actually visible a lot of times. Ours is not. When you understand the pineal gland, remember, it is made from the same tissues that the actual eyeball is made from. And it sits in the middle of your brain. It is the thing that controls your knowledge of it being daytime or nighttime without you having to pay attention to that. It's why you wake up in the morning and what they call your internal clock. That is linked to your pineal gland or your pineal gland or your pineal gland. Right? So you can see how that's directly linked to your genitalia. All these different energies flow from different areas. When a man excretes semen, that fluid is actually, and we'll talk about this a bit more another time, but it's actually a part of a sacred collection of fluids that come from all over the body and mainly the brain. Why do you think that it can create another human through it? This is a collection of you from all over you. You know, again, I'll get more into that in a male episode. But I just want to show that this pineal gland is something serious, and the fluids and what it produces is something serious, and how it processes light is definitely something that's very interesting to look into, if nothing else. I would really study the pineal gland if I have not done that. If I were you, I would look into that because it has a lot to do with you and how you react to things. And you can be doing things like using fluoride and other types of things that's actually calcifying your pineal gland to where you wouldn't even be able to function properly with it. And you wouldn't know that a lot of the symptoms and things you got going on in your life are based upon that. A healthy functioning pineal gland, or is it calcified? So it's a lot of things, man. Pay attention to the water you drink. A lot of things have to do with this stuff. So I'm going to take you all the way around, man, and just show you how all this stuff is connected. The pineal gland, too, one special thing about it, as far as it being a part of the body, it's the only thing in the body that has no mirrored side. Everything else in the body is split, right? It has a mirrored side of itself. But the pineal gland is the only thing that does not. Right? It is what they call the seat of the soul. It is a lot of things. It's referred to a lot of different ways depending on where you're reading about it. It's even called Lucifer. The thing they call Lucifer, that's only reference to the pineal gland. That's what I'm telling you. It's dangerous to not understand what you're involved in reading and paying attention to. Lucifer is only in relation to the pineal gland. The definition of Lucifer itself is the light bringer. That is the pineal gland. That's the thing that creates the light from the inside and reflects the light, that gives you light in you, that helps you perceive light that seems to be outside of you. Remember, the light you perceive on the outside came from your brain. See? It came from your brain. It came from the light that is in you. So even in the Bible, when they talk about that light, that's what they're referencing. The light, what comes from the pineal gland, was produced. The inner light. So yeah, Lucifer only means a light bringer, man. It's a lot of misguided knowledge that they done dropped on people, and it just has people living in fear of information. And that's the craziest part to me. Is that people are living in fear of information. So you gotta remember that we are the universe, but we are the parts of the universe that is aware of itself. But we are aware of ourselves as what we perceive ourselves to be. That is the key part of it. So there's a lot going on when you start breaking down these numbers, the chakra systems, and these different energies, the Kundalini, and how showing you that the pineal gland, how it's related to Kundalini, is directly related to sexual energy. That's why most religious men abstain from sex, because they understand the energy that they can build and create by not having sex. And how it actually, there's studies that, semen retention and things like this will actually raise your IQ and make you physically stronger. Not only that, but you'll function better as a whole. This is why everything is over-sexualized in society, because they don't want you doing that. They want you letting it go every chance you get. Right? So, these are the different quests that we go on, the different questions that we have about this place. When we're talking about knowledge, religion, and stuff like that. And I just really enjoy showing the connections. That's just something I'm into. It's very important to remember that when all this stuff started, you got the Sumerians, back in 3800 BCE, and they're looking up, and they've already gotten into astrology and all this type of stuff. And people say, well, I'm not into that, but this is what you got to understand. For thousands of years, the only thing studied in the heavens and above you was astrology. So you got to know that everything that you have now that you do accept, guess where it was born? Astrology. So from astrology came what we call modern day astronomy. From astronomy came mathematics and physics. Then you have alchemy, which is the search for transmutation, the study of transmutation and immortality. Now, transmutation is just basically the form of alchemy where you can take a substance and turn it into something more concentrated and more powerful, and even in a different form. So sometimes, for an example, how people take the plant like marijuana and turn it into wax or something like that. That is alchemy. That is alchemy. To be able to transmute it that way and maintain its integrity, right? Its genetics are maintained. So this whole study of alchemy and immortality, because we're talking about maintaining the genetics as we transmutate, right? This spawned the science of chemistry, which later specialized into particle physics and molecular biology. So you got to understand that everything they studying came from your people. Now they use DNA studies to study immortality. Because when you start getting into DNA and the genetics, you start to understand what's really happening here. And when I went into the study of genetics and DNA, man, it was so enlightening because it was stuff that I had no idea about. So all these different studies of mathematics and science, these come from the Sumerians. These come from the original men, the original people that had this technology already. Because remember, all time is now. Everything that exists always exists. There's never anything different. That's why there's nothing new under the sun. You accepted that, but you can't understand why you accepted that. There's only transmutations of the same thing. That is actually, how this place works. So getting into the genetics a little bit, let me take you down that road because I'm just flowing with it. So I'm just showing you how all these things just slide into each other. Right? These are things you can look deeper into at another time. So one night I had a dream that I was in this white room, and it was a room linked to another room, and you could see through with windows, right? And I was in a room talking to somebody, and this thing, I would say a thing because it looked like kind of like a human, but it was a little bit different, right? Because it appeared. And when it appeared, it had on the back of its head, it had 3 lines, 3 horizontal lines on top of each other, 3 stack of lines on the back of his head. Now, in the other room where you could see through the window, there was another guy just like that talking to somebody else. And what ended up happening was they just looked at each other and came together through the window. This thing went through the window, not like crashing through it, but literally like it wasn't there. joined with the other thing that looked just like it and became one thing. Now, when this happened, on the back of his head, there was now 6 horizontal lines. There was 3 lines and 3 lines, and they were lit up blue. They were lit up like this electric blue. Now, when I woke up from this dream, I started looking up that symbol on the internet. What is that? That seems like it has to be something. This is what I found. What that was actually a symbol for DNA. And man, it was amazing when I found that because the connection was real then. And I saw that what I was shown in the dream was actually a genetic sequence and how the DNA is formulated. It's even before DNA, RNA, and when you're dealing with the different proteins that start to create you. So this is what I discovered that I ran into. And how they use that with the knowledge is that they'll take the DNA. This goes into religion. This goes into planetary stuff. They'll take those 6 lines that represent the DNA, and they'll make a triangle out of each set of the 3 lines. Once you have the triangle, they will just invert one and lay it on top of the other one. This is where you get the 6-point star or the hexagram. And so this is the knowledge on this. This is why it bleeds into the Star of David and all that, which is only the spinning disk of information. That is what that represents. That's why you have the DVD. DVD is David. Remember, vowels mean nothing. They only represent something in the English language. So when you see vowels and stuff added, it's kind of added to kind of throw you off of something else. A lot of times, if you want to see what a word really is, remove the vowels and study etymology, and it'll tell you what that really is trying to say. A lot of times you can read a word backwards if it came from a different culture too, and see what they're really trying to say, like evil and live. So, which is, they're trying to say living in reverse is what's known as being evil. The 6-point star, why is that important? Because when you trace a 6-point star, it makes what is called the shape of a hexagram. Now, this is the kicker. When you study DNA, guess what you're made of at the smallest level of yourself before the RNA and everything forms to make DNA? 64 hexagrams. So this was what I saw in the dream led me to understand that this was the smallest version of yourself that existed, the 64. 64 hexagrams, 64 shapes create you. The same thing that the bees make with their nests and the wasps. Those natural shapes that they make, they didn't go to school to make, take geometry. They make that naturally because it's in their genetics. And they're closer to the line of genetics than we are. We're far removed. We're in human form right now. DNA and stuff is in no form. It's not in human form. You see? That's why everything has DNA. And when you study DNA, you see that the melanated man or the black man has the largest strand of DNA. And when you go through all the different cultures, the Caucasian or the European has the shortest strand of DNA. And that's why I say sometimes he has the least ability to be something else. It's not an insult. It's just what it is. He has the least ability to be something else. So, right now, I'm ending this part on genetics and talking about DNA. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right back and continue the episode on a new part. And I'm going to start right where we're stopping off with this 64 hexagons or hexagrams. And I want you to look this stuff up and understand that what I'm saying is just real knowledge that a lot of people just haven't ran into. This is you that you learn about. So, yeah, I'm going to cut this part and I'm going to jump back in with a part 3 of this episode. And I'm going to try to stop it on part 3, but I can't promise, man. This might just be a long episode that you have to take in different parts. Or what I might do is just leave this one 2 parts. That way, you don't have to keep restarting the episode to try to get to the next part. So that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah, repeat listeners, thanks for coming. New listeners, welcome. And this has been my 3 cents, giving you a deeper insight on myself and why I say what I say. I'm taking you on a journey through knowledge and showing you how a lot of these things are related, how all of these things are related. and I'm going to bring you all the way back to where we started. So this has been an episode of My 3 Cents. This is part 2, section 2 of this episode, and I'm going to get on to another episode and start another part. So I will see you on the next episode. Wholeness.